everyone to Network with Pride. We are so excited that you're joining us today. You should see my screen right now. My name's Jenna Campolita and I work in external relations at the Career Center at Hofstra. And we are so pleased to introduce our Network with Pride program, which allows you to still stay engaged and connected with employers that are looking to share industry information and potential job and internship opportunities. So this is an ongoing series that we've partnered with the Graduate Business Career Relations here at Hofstra to bring employers to students and chat about some different industry information and hopefully help you in your career development. So the Career Center is still very active. Even though campus is closed, we have a lot of online services for you. And the one that we're most excited about is coming up next Wednesday, April 15th from 10 to 2 p.m. And it is an online career fair that you can register via Handshake. And we have over 50 employers that are already registered and ready to come to support students and share information about recruitment opportunities. There's also counselors that are available for appointments if you'd like to prepare for the career fair, whether it's having your resume reviewed or talking a little bit about your pitch, so that way you feel comfortable and ready to go for next week's event. We also have a series of workshops every Wednesday, including this Network with Pride program, where you can check out on Handshake and see all the different topics that are available. There's also information here on this slide about how to connect to our social channels, so you want to stay active and engaged. And a lot of what you could be doing right now is preparing yourself for future opportunities. And this is today one way to do that. So I want to welcome Gabrielle Fonrouge, who's here from the New York Post. And Gabrielle's been nice enough to share some of her time. I know she's really busy, but we're so thrilled to have her. And not only is she a national correspondent and investigative journalist with the New York Post, but she can talk a lot about her career path and how her interests and passions have really guided and motivated her in her role at the New York Post. So without further ado, I'd like you all to meet Gabrielle. And if you're tuning in right now, speaker view is probably the best because Gabrielle will kind of take it from here and you'll get to chat with her. We also have the chat feature here on Zoom. So if you have questions while Gabrielle is speaking, you can utilize that. So Gabrielle, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your job at the Post, your career, and kind of your current position and how that works.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here and to be speaking with you, especially during this crisis. You know, it's great that you're coming out to still trying to take advantage of what your school has to offer. So that's a great sign for you. I'm a investigative reporter and a national correspondent with the New York Post. So I do a little bit of everything. No day is really the same up until this coronavirus crisis, of course. But, you know, every day, I mean, I could be starting each day heading to the office and reading into emails and talking with tipsters and trying to dig into stories and to, you know, information I might have received from people who are whistleblowers and tipsters and things like that. But then I could also, you know, I could be driving to work and they could say, turn around, go to the airport, go to Chicago, go to Boston, go to California, go wherever the news might be. So, you know, I never really know where the day might take me. I never know where the week might take me, but that's one of the things that I love most about working in journalism is that it never is stale. It's never stagnant. It's always something different. So, you know, when I'm traveling for work, I'm usually covering big breaking news events or I'm investigating stories. So, you know, for example, when New York City purchased a bunch of ferries and Mayor de Blasio wanted to have this big ferry program for the city. A bunch of them kept like sinking and kept getting holes in them. And we were trying to figure out why. So they sent me to New Orleans to where the boats were made. And there I was digging up information and stuff like that. So that's one aspect. But then also, you know, when there was the mass shooting at Parkland in Florida at the high school there at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, I was also sent there to cover that. And that was just a traditional breaking news experience, talking to witnesses, covering the press conferences, speaking with family members who'd lost others, trying to dig up information about the shooter and things like that. So that's what travel is like. And then when I'm in the office, I'm usually trying to dig into more long form stories. I might receive like one tip, like one piece of information. You know, I remember a good one. I got a tip that there was an NYPD officer who'd been beating up his wife and that he had stalked his wife. And, this is someone who's been taken an oath to protect our citizens and who is supposed to follow the law. And then he was doing the exact opposite, which was breaking it. So, I set up an anonymous call with the wife. I started, digging into who this officer was. And, then I was able to publish a story about it and kind of, out this officer as someone who isn't following the law and someone who's a bad guy and that needs to be reprimanded and disciplined. So that's, it really kind of just runs the gamut of things.
Great. And I thought it'd be really helpful for students to understand a little bit about how you transitioned from college to career and got started in investigative journalism.
Yeah, definitely. So, when I was in college, I was extremely motivated and journalism is one of those industries where it doesn't really matter. Well, it matters a bit, but it doesn't matter if you have like a master's degree or if you have your 4-year degree. I started doing internships as soon as I could. And I had to study abroad for a part of the program I was in. So I wasn't able to do my first internship until I was a junior, but I got a great internship with New York One News, which is like a very hands-on news program. They let you go out into the field. They let you interview people. They let you write stories and they let you answer the phones and take calls from tipsters and dig into stuff. So it was a great internship. And then by the end of the internship, they actually hired me to work. So I was just a junior in college. I mean, I just finished my junior year in college, but I was already working in the industry. And that's one of the great things about journalism. You guys can work for your local papers like Patch and things like that. If you see a story, you can call it in, you can give a shot at writing it. So I would start as soon as possible. And something else that I did while I was in college is network a lot, which is exactly what you guys are doing right now. And that couldn't be more important. I did this program with New York One. I was a news assistant, and they actually, because freelancers are abused so often, they actually had a cap on the amount of hours you could work, which was 900 hours. And after that, if you weren't hired as staff, they would have to let you go because at that point they would need to give you health insurance. That happened at the end of my senior year. So I was like, it was my second semester of my senior year in college, and I was already an unemployed reporter, which is just exactly how things are. But at the time, I was the president of the Society of Professional Journalists. We had a chapter at my university, St. John's in Queens. And, I brought in a bunch of speakers, journalists who were working in the field. And, for the exact same kind of thing like this, where other journalism students could meet them, start networking with them. And even though I was hosting the event, I, of course, was still networking myself. And there was a reporter there from the New York Post who was also an alum of St. John's. And I was like, look, I'm unemployed. I already have experience. Like, I could really use a job. And she was like, well, the Post is always hiring for field reporters. And those are like, it's like a part-time gig where you get dispatched all over the city, anywhere, like fire, go here. There's a shooting, go there. There's a politician that you need to ask comment for, go to this press conference, like all kinds of stuff. And, I ended up getting hired to do that while I was a senior. And then, ever since then, so this was while I was still in college. And then in the few years after college, I freelanced and I took a job with the Post. I was also doing freelance reporting for a radio station on Long Island, WSHU University. I've been to Hofstra actually to do stories before. And not that they really wanted me there. I just and I was freelancing for Vice, writing articles for Vice. I was really just finding anywhere where I could work and pulling it together. And then in 2016, I was hired. I got my first full-time job in news. I got health insurance. I got the benefits package, got it all. It took me 2 years to get there, but I have it now.
So, you mentioned it does take time as you build your experience. And when you and I chatted, we talked about how sometimes there are some less glamorous aspects about the field because it is some tough work. You have to be truly motivated. So if you could talk a little bit about, the being up for anything, being available and making, yourself, approachable for those jobs when the story breaks.
Yeah, definitely. So when I went to go interview for the New York Post, I didn't even tell the hiring manager that I was still a student. I just said I can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whatever you guys need, because, by then I was in my last semester of my senior year. I was gaining more by working in the field than I was in the classroom. And like, I was still able to make it to class, graduate and finish your courses, which I did. But I didn't, like, I was missing class to go on assignments, and I was filling it in, and I was able to finish everything. But like, I was just immediately like, I am here, I can work whenever. And that's exactly the kind of attitude that you need in news. When you're first starting out, you really got to start out at the very bottom of the pile, and you have to be hungry, and you have to be motivated, and you have to be passionate. This is not the type of job that you want to take unless you have a sincere passion for reporting. And for me, I always had a sincere passion for it because I wanted to expose bad people. I studied social justice in college. I realized that there were so many social injustices in our world. And instead of working for a nonprofit or as a politician where I can do piecemeal, maybe in 5 years I can get a bill passed that would help people. And then maybe 5 years from the bill getting passed, it would actually start to help people. I can affect change on a very rapid basis by writing a story. So that's something that really fueled my work. So you need to find something that fuels you. And it doesn't have to be investigative reporting. It could be, a passion for music or a passion for fashion, but it has to be something that really sets your soul on fire because it's really tough starting out. So when I was starting out, I was a freelancer. I didn't know where my next paycheck was coming. Every single day, I would wake up in the morning and pitch stories to people that had hired me that I was doing freelance work for. And I'd get a gig here, I'd get a gig there. And I'm like, all right, I made $200. Okay, tomorrow's the next day. All right, now I have enough money for rent, whatever. But I managed to live alone. I had my own apartment in Brooklyn, and I managed to make it work because I worked my ass off. Like one of the, like a good example of that is like, it was like a few months after college, and like I had probably gone out the night before or something, and it was like 10 in the morning and I was still sleeping, and I get this call from the producer out on Long Island, and he was like, look, there's this crazy flood on Long Island. He was like, it's absolutely historic. He was like, I need you for the national desk. Can you get out there? And I jumped out of bed, I threw on some clothes and just like sped down the 495 and got there as soon as I could. And, I ended up having a story on the national NPR broadcast, and I still use that in my reel today. That was 6 years ago. So it's about being available. It's about being ready to work. And it's like, also, it's something, a lot of the people that I see that come into the business, they are expecting full-time jobs with cushy benefit packages and, a set, like, I'm going to be writing about, everything I want to write about. Like, I have these passions and like, I want to write about that. And that's not how it's going to happen at first. You really have to prove yourself and write and start writing about things that maybe you typically wouldn't be that interested in. So you can prove that you are capable of handling stories like that, and then you can work your way up to where you want to go. So for the first couple of years, I was just taking whatever I could. If it was, County Executive Steve Ballone having a press conference out in Suffolk County about some new law that he wanted to sign, I would go to that, and I would make $120 for doing that. And then the New York Post needed me for a night shift. Okay, I would go to the night shift and cover all the crime that happened that night. And like slowly but surely, I started to really find myself as a reporter and, hustling, and just like, there was times where I would work 10 days in a row, but, luckily I was like 23 and had lots of energy. And, you work hard early so you can chill later on. So now, like by 2016, I'd already been out of school for 2 years. I'd been working to establish myself, and I was able to convince the, editor-in-chief at the New York Post to hire me full time. And they asked me what I wanted to do. And I was like, look, I want to do long form reporting, and I want to do investigative reporting, and I want to travel, which is like a dream job, right? And they're like, all right, let's do it. And then as soon as they hired me, I just immediately started delivering. I started pitching stories that, needed to be dug into. They actually called me. I'd been hired full time for about like 6 months at this point, and I still hadn't traveled for them. And I had a wedding I was supposed to go to that week. And my boss calls me and she was like, do you want to go to California? She was like, someone got kidnapped and we want you to investigate it. I was like, yep, I'm going. So I didn't go to the wedding. I just hopped on a plane and I was in California for a week investigating, one of the most high profile kidnappings that had happened in recent years. Sherry Papini, I don't know, you guys Google it afterwards. It's a really weird story. But a lot of fun reporting it. So that's just kind of the, and now like, I went for years not having health insurance. I went for years, not like just kind of like scrabbling together whatever I could to feed myself and to clothe myself and everything. It's tough if you don't have support from families or things like that, but I was able to do it. And now I have a full-time job. I have a great salary. I have a great benefits package. I have wonderful insurance. I have an expense account, like I can expense my cell phone. I get to, if I want to order a book for research, I can expense that. And now I have a little bit, when I travel for work, I stay in nice hotels and my company takes care of me. It took me some time to get there, but it's certainly possible. You just need to work your butt off and then you'll get there.
So that's really helpful information. And you spoke a lot about certain qualities and characteristics that have been helpful in kind of building your career. And I thought it would be good for students to hear a little bit about kind of the skill set that either you acquired from your internship experience or even from some of the coursework that you completed that you feel like is really attractive for potential employers, or even technical skills that you find have been helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't do my first internship, like I said, until I was a junior. And afterwards, it really changed the way that I was picking my courses, because I really wanted to pick courses that I could directly transfer to like hireable skills, so I made sure to take a media graphics class. So now I know how to use Photoshop. I know how to use Illustrator. I know how to use InDesign. I took a documentary production class. I wasn't a TV production major, but now I know how to do long form documentaries. I also took a public relations writing class because you know what? You never know. You might have to take a job in public relations while you get yourself on your feet. I know how to write a press release. So I tried to pick courses that I could do, that I know I could sell. And also something else that I really love to tell students is that don't pigeonhole yourself into one medium. Journalism now is a digital, it's radio, it's print, it's video, it's broadcast, it's everything. And you want to be able to know everything. So, I took news writing classes for print. I took feature writing classes for print, but I also took radio announcing classes, and I also took, TV production classes. So I worked at the radio station, I worked at the TV station, and I worked at the newspaper. And that has proven to be so beneficial. So, the Post recently started a podcast, and I was called in to help with the podcast because I have that experience, you know what I mean? So it makes me more, when I want to go in there and command a higher salary, I can, because I'm like, look, I can do a lot more than just write a story. I can shoot video, I can take pictures, I can record radio spots, I can do it all. So you want to try to make yourself as varied as possible with your experience. You want to have as many skills as you can, as many technical skills. That's Photoshop, that's Adobe Premiere, Final Cut. I took a video editing class, which was tremendously helpful. So, actually during my freelancing time, I decided to take a month off to go to Europe to shoot a documentary. And I put my apartment on Airbnb and just figured it out. I was in my early 20s. And when I came back, I was super broke and I really needed to get right away. So I started working as a writer at Pix 11 News. And so luckily I already had the background of being able to video edit. So I was able to get that job. But if I hadn't have taken those courses in college, I wouldn't have been able to get that. So I was able, I was freelancing there while at the Post and the radio station until I got my full-time job. So that'll really help you getting as many technical skills as you can.
So speaking of kind of the skills and transferring it to opportunities, I know we spoke a little bit about how the Post is always looking for kind of freelance reporters. How might students find out about opportunities? I'm going to include the link in our chat about the current postings that the Post has. But when you were first kind of pitching for freelance positions, if you could talk a little bit about the highs and the lows of that type of experience freelancing, and then also kind of typical salary that you see for freelance jobs so students know what to expect.
Definitely. So, one time, the way that I got into Vice is that I Sorry, I just saw your message. So the way that I got into Vice is I was on Reddit one night. I hope you guys all know what Reddit is, and if you don't, find out. And I was under like the writers like thread or whatever, and like Vice was like looking for submissions, and I was like, ooh. So like I immediately emailed the editor, and I sent him like 3 of my best pitches, and he was like, I've gotten a ton of emails tonight, but these were some of the best ones, and that translated into a job, and I was able to negotiate maybe like $250 for an article, and then I did all the reporting, I did all the writing, and now I have 3 bylines in Vice. So that's how that started. And then with the radio station, I had been networking with somebody, and somebody had said, oh, Long Island is looking for, like college grads or, lowly people like myself at the time to do kind of like bottom of the barrel work, but, still like invaluable work. I mean, I learned so much doing that kind of stuff. And that's how you get the fundamentals. You can't just start in doing like, top of the line stuff. Like you have to start by like doing really hyper local stuff, kind of learning how things work. And journalism is one of those jobs that you learn by doing. You're going to learn so much more by doing anything than you are in your classrooms. Like, trust me, they're still invaluable what you learned in school, but this is something that you learn by doing. So the highs and lows, like, not having my pitches accepted, there's a lot of rejection, and you can't let your ego play too much of a role here. You know what I mean? It's not personal. You just got to do better, and it makes you do better, because when somebody doesn't like your pitch, you're like, okay, let me think harder. Let me think in a different way. Let me figure out a way I can repackage this idea. And then, a lot of times they will take it afterwards, after you rework it and figure out a new way to sell the story. That's another thing. You have to really be a good salesperson, because you have to sell your ideas. And that's where that passion is so important, because if you're passionate about something and you see the value in it, you're going to be able to sell that to somebody else. Like for a lot of the times, like I would just be checking the Associated Press daybook to see all the news events that were happening that day, press conferences with big politicians, and they might just need a body to go there and take the notes and report back to somebody else who can write it, or write it up yourself. And so that was like the kind of stuff that I used to do.
So we're living in kind of a breaking news constant cycle right now. For students that are maybe away from campus, thinking about their short-term and long-term career plans, what would be your advice in kind of gaining experience now, given the pandemic, or even to speak a little bit about the work that you're doing and how that might play into what they could do?
Mm-hmm. Right now, like if you see us, a good thing that you can do, like, I think I didn't answer this during the last one, and it kind of relates to this question as well. A good way to, like, for example, our career page isn't that accurate, because we're always hiring for part-time field reporters, and we're always hiring for writers. And if you have some talent and something to offer, then they'll hire you. You know what I mean? Like, so don't pay so much attention to career pages. Find out, like, if you're a journalist, you've got to be good at finding out who people are. So figure out who, like, if you want to work for the sports department at Fox News or at NBC or something, like, figure out who the managing editor is at the Fox sports department. Send them an email. You can find their email, I promise you, if you just do a little digging, and just reach out to people and say, you know what, I'm available to work. This is what I have to offer. It's kind of like cold calling, but cold calling really works in this industry. And that's something else that you can do while you're at home. You're in your own neighborhoods right now. You guys might be seeing things, you might be experiencing things, and you're like, you know what, that might be a story. So, call Newsday, call Patch, and say, or email them and say, listen, I saw this, I'm a journalism student, I think there's something here. I'd be happy to go out and do this. I'm available anytime. And that kind of stuff, that could actually really turn into something, because a lot of the times people need bodies just to do things. Like most newsrooms are understaffed and strapped. It's still like, we're still transitioning and learning how to be in a digital world. So, newsrooms are still figuring out a way to make that profitable. So we're still pretty lean machines, and they really appreciate people to go. So right now, like, there's a copy kid that works at the Post, and he's like desperate to break in, and he just does like, you know, the clerical duties, and he runs copy back and forth. It's like a really antiquated position too, because like print is, you know, so antiquated. But he's like so hungry, and he lives in New Hampshire, and, you know, he saw, this was before coronavirus, but one of the primaries was happening in New Hampshire. So he emailed our politics editor, and he was like, listen, I'm going to be in New Hampshire. Like, I'm home for the weekend. If you need someone else out there to go to some rallies or something, I'm available. He was like, definitely. He ended up covering 2 enormous rallies with like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. He ended up writing some stories, and he got some bylines out of it. And that was all because he stuck his neck out and said, I'm available.
Thank you so much. It's really helpful information. So I know that we have several students here on the call, and if they want to unmute themselves and ask you a question, or if they are more comfortable typing it into the chat and I can read it, but I want to open it up for questions from students.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Extracurriculars in college, do you think helped you the most to like get your first internship?
Yeah, I think it did. You know, making sure that I had clips from the school paper, that, you know, I had my own radio show, Morning Gab, which was really cute, if I do say so myself. Yeah, you know, like when I was interviewing at New York One, like I knew a little bit about video editing already because I've been in the video club. I knew about radio reporting because I've been in the radio club, and I knew about writing. So that was the kind of stuff that really helped me get that job. You definitely want to be doing clubs and extracurriculars like that, because, you know, like you're competing with some of the best and the brightest, you know what I mean? You have to be able to stick out and show that like, I'm going to be able to do this, and I'm going to be able to thrive.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I think Rachel has a question. If you want to just unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi. So I was kind of looking at your bio before like this started, and you like have a lot of like work in like human rights and like that kind of advocacy. How did you like get into that, like for your including it in your journalism? Like, how did you find that passion between like, or the balance between your passion and your work?
That's a tough one. So, you know, of course, that was something that I couldn't really do at the beginning of my career. I studied social justice in college. I've worked in nonprofits. I've worked with the homeless, and that was always something I was really passionate about. But I decided to take a career in journalism. And at first, like, it was hard for me to write about those topics because I just had to do whatever I could do. But now that I'm in this position, those are the kinds of stories that I pitch. And I find, you know, because I know a lot about them, because I'm passionate about them, I can explain to my editor why they're newsworthy, and they can agree with me. And so that's how I've been able to get into that work. You know, it's certainly not everything that I do. Like, I have to still write stories that I think are stupid and that I don't really feel like writing about. But that's any job, you know what I mean? Like, not every single day is going to be like doing exactly what you want to do. And even where I am right now, I'm still not exactly where I want to be. I mean, I'm 28 years old, and the ladder is very long. You know, I still have a lot to go. And that's something, you know, it's a ladder that you climb, and you slowly can work into that stuff. You know, once you prove yourself, you can start pitching stories that you're really passionate about, and, you know, find a way to make them newsworthy, and find a way to convince your editor that it's worth their time.
We probably have time. Oh, sorry.
No, so I just want to make sure I answered your question. Feel free to follow up. You got to pester me. You know, you guys are young reporters.
So I just want to, we have time maybe for one more question. If there's any follow-up questions or someone who hasn't spoken up yet. Well, I know, you know, you had spoken to me a little bit about the Everyday Heroes features that you're doing right now. And I thought that's a nice kind of positive way to end things, to talk a little bit about how you've been kind of using your role at the Post to highlight people who are doing or contributing to helping others right now, given everything going on. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, and maybe we can read some of the stories that you've done.
Oh yeah, totally. So, you know, it's actually been really tough covering this crisis because I'm living it also. So I'm like just a member of the public, just like everybody else, but then I also have to be completely immersed in this every single day. So we started a series called Hero of the Day, where it's a daily column where we're highlighting like, one person each day about who's going above and beyond during this crisis. And which, we felt like the public really needed, because there's just so much gloom and doom. And like, I don't even want to watch the news, and I'm a reporter. Like, I can't, because it just gives me anxiety. It's like, it's very, very tough. So, I've been doing this daily hero story, which has actually been really nice. We're able to highlight like positive things that people are doing, the healthcare workers that are going above and beyond. And, you can really tease out some really incredible details from these healthcare workers and from these other people about what they're doing. Sneak peek for tomorrow, we're running a subway cleaner. He's got the dirtiest job in the city, but it's so incredibly important because essential workers still need the subways. And then, the other day, or yesterday, actually, we had a pulmonologist who, I don't know if you guys heard, but Elon Musk had donated like all these sleep apnea machines, and they were like useless. And he got all this press like, oh yeah, I'm this hero. And then they're like, wait, these things don't even freaking work. So what the hell? So then I interviewed a pulmonologist who Mount Sinai Hospital received 300 of these machines. And this guy figured out a way to make them work as actual ventilators. So that was heroic in that sense. He was able to bring creative minds together and to fix a problem, and so that they can help more patients. So that's been a really, that's actually been the most consistent job I have done since I started as a journalist. So it's been an interesting experience for me. It's been a little bit different, but the stories have been really beautiful. And I hope if you guys read them, they can bring some light to your day, and you can share them on Facebook or with some of your network. That'd be great.
Thank you, Gabby, for all the hard work that you do and for joining us today. I know you had mentioned if students wanted to connect with you that they could do that. So I don't know if you want to, students can always email me or the Career Center to get Gabby's information. And, we encourage you to continue to network. She just put her direct email in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that. So thank you, Gabby, for your time and attention. And I wanted to give one last push for our online career fair that's happening next week. And WABC is one of our employers that's coming. And, you want to practice your pitch, you want to build your connections and look for future opportunities. So thanks so much, Gabby. I'm going to share my screen one last time so you can all see the information about the career page at the New York Post. And I put the link in there, and as she had mentioned, there's opportunities always for part-time field reporters, freelance. You can see that there are summer internship opportunities that are there as well. And finally, for our online career fair happening Wednesday, April 15th from 10 to 2, and you can register on Handshake and find out the information. There's actually a direct link here for the Career Ego, so you can see that as well. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to end the meeting now, but thank you, Gabby, again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. All right, take care, everyone. Stay healthy.
Well.